You know, I thought part 1 was great, but with part 2, oh my god. In the simplest terms, I'm absolutely blown away. What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. You're with Chris, and today I'm super excited to be sharing with you my thoughts and impressions in part 2 of my epic reading vlog for The Way of Kings by Mr. Brandon Sanderson. I enjoyed part 1 immensely, but part 2 is just so next level and it blew me away. Where do I start with this? Okay, the first obvious thing is Shellen has taken a back seat with this part. We don't see her at all apart from the start of this particular part, but she's currently working under Jasna in Carvaled as a ward, so she's pretty tied up with that at the moment and remaining stationary, so we don't know what she's been up to. The main focus for this part are the two characters, Kaladin and High Prince Dalinar, with Dalinar getting the most page time for most of this part, and I really don't have a problem with that because he is fast becoming one of my favourite characters. The world building continues to amaze me as I learn more about the Parshendi and the culture of the Akalar Kingdom, and with the politics and the warcraft and the roles that each gender play in society. It's all very, very interesting, and Sanderson continues to paint a very vivid picture of this world in great detail, but not in a boring way, because he has a very, very good way of just weaving in certain details without being bogged down with lengthy descriptions or anything like that, which is one of the most enjoyable things in this book. Nothing's rammed down your throat. It's subtly introduced and described very, very subtly, and I think that is fantastic. So we catch up with Kaladin, and now he is trying to build his Bridge 4 team, and what we witness here is he goes to extraordinary lengths in order to talk his men around and gain their allegiance. And the character in Bridge 4, Rock, he's a big horn eater, and he is one of my favourite characters. With the dialogue he uses, he sounds to me like someone with a South African accent, and despite his huge bulk and toughness, he is actually a soft-hearted soul. And the interesting thing here is he is able to see Syl, the Windspring that was mainly attached to Kaladin, but he can see her too, which was really interesting. And I think after a bout of chasm duty where the bridge team have to scale down the chasms in between the shattered plains or plateaus, and it's their job to go along and look for dead bodies that have fallen in there and loot those bodies and relieve them of weapons and shields and armor, and even Parshendi who have dropped into the chasms, who actually have gems in their beards which they harvest essentially. So it's their role to go down there and pick all that stuff up and bring it back to the camp as part of their jobs. And it's also a really good character trait of Kaladin's to not leave behind any wounded members of his team on the plains. It's usually frowned upon, and the hierarchy tends to say, look, just leave them there. Leave them to die. But Kaladin's not having any of that. He believes in the value of his men, and he drags them back, and against the policy, he manages to find a way to help the men recover in certain ways, which I won't go into there because of spoilers, but it's very, very noble what he does and very brave, and he goes against the tide because he fights for what he believes is right. So he has a very righteous streak, which is very admirable, and he's fast becoming one of my favourite characters of all time, and you simply can't help but admire him. But the main story arc of part 2 is Dalinar's story arc, and after finishing part 2 I teared up a little bit because his story hits you right in the feels. He was once known as Blackthorn, the fiercest warrior in the kingdom, and he had a really good track record of kills, and he was savage and uses his shard blade and shard armor or shard plate to just wreak havoc. And now we see him as a different man, because now he is fighting internal demons, and his way of thinking has changed from the norm. What I mean by that is he believes that, look, the whole war between the Alethi and the Parshendi was all to do with the assassination of King Gavilar, and he thinks to himself after, well, how much more can this go on? How much more vengeance can be sought? He believes that the kingdom itself needs looking after, rather than this war that has become all about glory and competition for the different teams under the High Princes competing for killing chasm fiends and harvesting gem hearts, of all things. So it's become a bit of a contest, but for a long time that's the way the kingdom has been, knowing only war. And it's like he has a crisis of conscience. But there are other issues at play here, because during high storms, something really interesting is Dalinar experiences episodes whilst a high storm is in progress. To everyone else, he's on the ground, he's helpless, he's having seizures and has delusions, and he claims to have visions from a very distant past to do with the original Radiance. And he believes that the old ways of thinking need to come back. But since time has gone on, and with the new king in place, it's all changed, and no one wants to go back to the old ways of thinking. Now, people on the surface think that Dalinar is losing his mind, and Sanderson really explores mental health really well in detail here. Now, Dalinar is being labelled as mentally unstable, but not everything can be explained away with these labels. Taking the easy way out rather than listening to him, because whatever he's saying is falling on deaf ears, and they just don't believe him, and they think he's delusional and sick. Even his two sons believe the same thing. But as time goes on, we see his credibility towards others crumble. And when he tries to talk the king out of continuing with the war, obviously people think he's daft. And it's a pretty big downfall because of the reputation he had as the Blackthorn, and for him to come full circle to, he's war weary, he's sick of the fighting. There's a scene where he is fighting the Parshendi, and for a minute, he's got his shard plate and shard blade, and he's fighting, and he has the war thrill that he experiences. But then for an instant he feels sick into his stomach about what he's doing, and eventually the thrill comes back, but there's sort of a chink in his proverbial armour there. But what if all this isn't in his head? He has an experience that begs the question: how is he tied to the high storms? How is he dialed into ancient knowledge and ancient memory? I think there are arcane things at play here under the surface, and I think Jasna, with her research she's doing, she is sort of labelled by some as a heretic who has gone off and wants to seek the truth about what happened in the past. So what she's doing is in a way supporting what Dalinar thinks, and there are a couple of scenes where Dalinar receives a communication from Jasna about what she's doing, and I think Dalinar wants her back at the Shattered Plains, because I think she is the only one that can back up Dalinar with what he's trying to say. Because of all these events in history, Jasna is trying to bring those to light and research them and see that if any of the legends are actually true. I think the continuity is great, especially with Navani, Gavilar's widow. There is a history there with a love triangle between her, Gavilar, and Dalinar. He's very uncomfortable to be around her, and for good reason, and she's sort of baiting him and manipulating him a little bit, which is really interesting. His relationship with his sons at the moment is very, very strained, because they are viewing him as weak, and when he suggests to stop the war and focus on the kingdom with the king, I have a passage here that I want to share with you, which really was powerful writing on Sanderson's part, and I teared up a little bit at this point. This is where Dalinar and the king are having an exchange when Dalinar is trying to get his view across, which is frowned upon and not very popular amongst the high princes. And here it goes. He turned away from Dalinar, leaning against the railing. "You think I'm a poor king, don't you, uncle?" "What? Of course not. You always talk about what I should be doing and where I am lacking. Tell me truthfully, uncle, when you look at me, do you wish you saw my father's face instead?" "Of course I do," Dalinar said. Alakar's expressions darkened. Dalinar laid a hand on his nephew's shoulder. "I'd be a poor brother if I didn't wish that Gavilar had lived. I failed him. It was the greatest, most terrible failure of my life." Elhokar turned to him, and Dalinar held his gaze, raising a finger. "But just because I loved your father does not mean that I think you are a failure. Nor does it mean I do not love you in your own right. Elhokar itself have collapsed upon Gavilar's death. But you organised and executed our counterattack. You are a fine king." Isn't that just great writing? And I teared up a little bit at that because it was just really, really good, and it was a very, very emotional moment between the two. Okay, so all the events of Dalinar's arc all lead up to a shocking decision that he has come to terms with what he needs to do, and no doubt this is going to be a bombshell amongst the war camp, and I'm eager to see how that pans out. It's a momentous decision and a very difficult decision which Dalinar has spent quite a bit of time reaching, and it's just really interesting. Now, I most likely will be tied up with part 3 well into next week, and I hope to get the next video up ASAP, but thanks for sticking with me through this. Revelations are coming, I'm sure, and the rest of the book, I think there's going to be definitely some late nights coming up for me, so sleep isn't going to be very high on the agenda for me, because I'm predicting as I get through the second half of the book, and when I get to the last part of the book, I think I'm going to mow through it pretty quickly, because it's reputed that things will ramp up pretty quickly, and things accelerate as well. So I'm very, very excited. I can't believe I'm at the halfway point already. I am smashing through it, but with these characters you can't help but keep turning the pages, and your curiosity is piqued at what is going to happen. There are so many unanswered questions that are irresistible to me, and I have to find out these answers. So tonight I'm recording this on Saturday. Tonight I will read the interludes between parts 2 and 3, and then straight into part 3, and hopefully I'll have the video up for you very, very soon. But I am loving this book. It is really affecting me in many ways. I'm drawn to the characters, and I'm invested in the story, and you know, it's a chunker of a book. It's 1,200 pages. I mean, look at this thing. Look how thick it is. It is just amazing, and look, there's the halfway point there. But I prefer to read the small format on my lap rather than reading the big hardcover, because I do want to keep that in pristine condition, and this one's sort of a good reading copy, and I will read it on digital as well, especially in bed. But reading at night in bed isn't a good thing, because I'm lucky to read 2 pages and I am out like a light, but you do get that. But I'm excited, so thank you very much for watching this update in the Epic Reading vlog, and should be another 3 videos before I am done. I'm looking forward to getting over the finish line, and as I said in the first video, once I finish Way of Kings, I will be going back and doing a proper Cosmere reading order. The reason I wanted to start with the Way of Kings was because I wanted a really good taste of the world of Roshar, and wanted to really sink my teeth in, and I've certainly done that. And looking forward to reading a lot more in the Cosmere, because Brandon Sanderson's writing is absolutely incredible, guys. I had no idea he was this good, and yeah, can't wait to continue. So please don't forget to like and subscribe. Offer up any comments below. Let's compare notes if you've read the book. Tell me what your thoughts are on what I've discussed, and yeah, be happy to compare notes with you. But until the next video, guys, happy reading.